So, welcome to the Rare Executives Business Briefing. For first-time viewers, Rare Executives helps tech-related companies to grow by finding them the best leaders in the sector to hire. Today, I'm joined by Karl Eastwood. Karl's the CEO at Global Lingo. Hi, Karl.
Hi, Maurice. Good to be here.
So, quick story of Karl, because he's too modest, he won't tell you this. In 7 years, from bookkeeper to CEO, and a lot of travel in between there. Yorkshire lad, now in Chicago. So what a journey that was, Karl.
Yeah, that's right. I started at Global Lingo. Actually, it was just 12 years, started in 2011 as a bookkeeper. Interesting backstory, I suppose. I can give you like 30 seconds.
Sure.
I chose not to go to university. It wasn't the route for me. Decided to get into finance out of sixth form. Because I didn't experience the university thing, I took a bit of time out traveling Southeast Asia and Australia, got back to the UK, settled back into an accounting job, realized I had the bug for travel, started looking for another opportunity which would give me that opportunity, and language services just came about. And I kind of thought, well, sounds international. It sounds like give me an opportunity to travel again. Landed at Global Lingo, bookkeeper, and then over that 12-year span, started out from Leeds, moved to Romania for 5 years, built the organization there. And then 2018, moved to the US, to Chicago.
Fantastic.
And became CEO in 2019.
And how's life in the Windy City?
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's great. You have always those impressions of what the US might be like to live in. And I mean, obviously it was super unfortunate. I land here and then a pandemic happens a couple of years later. So my experience has not been what I expected it to be, but I'm hoping I'm going to be here long term. So it's good to kind of get back into normality for sure.
Fantastic. Listen, Karl, I want to ask you some questions about what it's like running a growing company. I wonder if you'd tell us a bit about Global Lingo's mission and the vision, the size of the business, the marketplace, and the solutions in some layman's terms.
Yeah, sure. So we've been focused for many years on supporting like learning and development. E-learning is a big focus area for Global Lingo from a content perspective. And what we did in 2019 was start to understand, well, what actually is our mission, to transform from being a jack of all trades language services company to be something which people can get behind as a vision and mission, employees, customers understand what we're trying to deliver. And ultimately what we realized was from the different services we offered, working with employee relations teams, offering services such as minute taking and note taking services, to learning and development and e-learning localization, we realized what we're trying to do is create inclusivity within the workforce by removing language as a barrier. So what we've taken from there is really focused our organization into learning and development, market research, financial services, public sector. We work a lot with United Nations, but then also the various different services within there. So translation, interpretation, transcription, and other localization offerings, and market research specific offerings, which are niche. Things like coding of surveys comes up a lot for us. And we can do that in over 150 languages, because at the core of what we offer is project management solutions, consultancy, and recruitment. Our business model actually outsources the translation aspect.
And how are you guys growing your business, Karl? I mean, basically, as a layman looking from the outside in, in my world, I've recruited in LSP and now language tech companies for probably the last 5-10 years. There's obviously a wind of change going through there like there is everywhere else. How are you guys growing your business going forward? Yeah,
sure. So just to roll that, I mean, our vision is essentially to become a leading language service provider. So we've grown since 2019 from a 3 million to a 10 million pound language services company. So we're scaling organically. So the continued growth strategy is an organic growth strategy in the USA, in Europe, and in Asia Pacific. So we have sales hubs in Singapore, London, and across the USA. So what we've been doing to grow is looking at opportunity to expand our service offerings. So we're going beyond just market research localization, like I said, to market research, social listening, or coding, or any sub-service of what market research agencies typically ask for. We've been entering new markets. This year we opened an office in Cairo, The year previous, we opened in Central America, in Guatemala. And ultimately, it's been about building out those long-term relationships with clients. So we've got a really strong business development platform, I would say, and we've been really great at organic growth through business development. And over the past few years, we've been maturing our account management environment so that really we can help more the existing business and grow wallet share there.
Right. Listen, obviously there's a tricky time going on in the economy and stuff at the moment. We've all got some obstacles there. And, I just wondered what kind of the current obstacles to growth are for you guys and how you've overcome them.
Yeah. One of the most obvious areas of obstacle the language services industry faces is the competition that we've got. The barriers to entry in this industry are rather low. So typically what you see is when there are agencies maybe absorbed into another company through acquisition, that usually forces the existing agency and multiplies out the business into another agency on top of that. So the scope and the number of agencies that create in this industry is huge. And that puts pressure on pricing, on talent acquisition, on making sure you're being more competitive than your competitor. So to overcome this, what we've been trying to do over the past few years is a lot of investments going into technology. At Global Lingo, we're really trying to expand out how efficiently we can get the job done to become more price competitive. We're trying to make use of artificial intelligence through machine translation or automatic speech recognition to be faster than maybe the competitor can offer the solution within. But ultimately, it's constantly looking to offer increased value-add services beyond the core of being a translation business.
How do you go about scaling your teams as well, Karl? I mean, obviously, that's more my side in terms of recruitment and what have you. But, do you find somebody very good, they're successful, you support them and build people around them? Or, will you, if you're looking, say, in a different country or a different region, will you make acquisitions there in terms of buy a small company in to get instant market presence? How do you scale your teams?
Yeah, so when I created Global Lingo's 5-year strategy back in 2019, we put the development of people at the core of it. The philosophy being that essentially businesses in this industry are built on the people within, and therefore we need to invest a lot of money and time into the development of that talent. So the management team at Global Lingo have all been built from within the organization. Very rarely have we hired externally. When we do, it's specific top tier talent, usually through a recruitment agency like your own. And that then has led to us expanding to other global locations. So we have operational hubs in Egypt, in Guatemala and Romania. And to ensure we can scale there, the locations we've been picking are where maybe there's been a strong university that offers translation as a topic. So Cluj-Napoca, Romania, we opened in 2013, and we looked at the entirety of Europe in terms of where's going to be the most cost-effective place to open, but where also has the top talent that we can form into language solutions talent in the future. And Cluj-Napoca also turned out to be a technology hub. So it answered all three of our issues there. We found language professionals with really strong universities, with excellent English capabilities, and surrounded by technologists. And that there basically became the philosophy of everywhere we set up for our operational platforms. So we did the same in Cairo, in Egypt, and we did the same in Guatemala City. And those three locations have been pillars for Global Lingo of our growth. So that's how we've kind of scaled our operations platforms. It's really being mindful of cost, but also the talent that you can acquire for that cost.
Karl, what about what's important when you're actually hiring people in? Is it find me the best person from the competition? Somebody once said to me, listen, unless they're good people, I'm not interested. Fundamentally, I want somebody that I'd be happy to go for a beer with, right? Or, that I get on with. And then obviously the rest of it builds out from there. And I know it's tricky, it's different styles, but, what's important when you're hiring?
Yeah, I've heard the whole connotation of if you'll go for a beer with them, that they'll make a good hire, or you better get along with them. And I do resonate with that somewhat. But I think one of the things that you've got to really focus on is not the skill of the individual, like can they use the technology you've got, things you can train internally. I find that's a lot easier process to land on people. My experience over the years has actually been more about the attitude of the individual, their willingness to want to be a part of what you're trying to achieve. But then it's beyond skill set and to competencies. So Global Lingo actually has a really important personal development framework that we implemented in 2019. And that framework assigns objectives and KPIs to people. But then it goes deeper than that. It also looks at the skill set of the individual, and skills are things like company knowledge, industry knowledge, how you approach potentially account management methodologies, and the tools within account management. But the deeper part, which is a really important aspect, are the competencies of the individual, because competencies are not often just trained. They can be coached in, but it's a really difficult process. And you can often see competencies from the beginning. So Global Lingo has 40 different competencies that we grade every employee on, and every employee is held to the same set of 40. And that's kind of what we're looking for in our recruits. So a couple that comes to mind really are the curiosity of individuals. Have they shown an initiative to think curiously about how they do their job? I don't want robots, people who just follow process. Are we finding people that look to constantly add value and change what's around them? And those two concepts are linked. Like, be curious about your role and then look at how you can make it better, and ultimately be solutions oriented. That's the thing about the localization industry in a way, is because it's so people. Where do people add value? Right, and I think this has been smart then about how you integrate automation and AI within the organization. Is people don't add value by clicking buttons, moving files left and right, and doing the back end work. That should be automated. So what you want is people who are in front of a client, who are looking to add value, who are curiously thinking, how can I make your life better, client A, and how can I add more value to you in your day to day? And how can I create better solutions to improve your experience of working with Global Lingo? And that's something that we've really kind of focused on in the interview stage. Are those things apparent? We're also then looking at candidates who are flexible, collaborative, and customer focused, and essentially align with our company values.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Listen, what about AI, machine learning? I'm just really interested in what your predictions are. You can't get away from it at the moment. Every time you open a paper or open your laptop, it's there. And what they're saying is, look, it's faster translation services, or work smarter, or better quality. I mean, obviously, I saw ChatGPT the other day. That blew my mind, as a layman. It was just amazing. But also things like, more languages, where there's human intervention. I mean, at the end of the day, I kind of get the whole AI ML argument. But obviously what sits above all that seems to be humans in the process to manage the complexities. What's your view, right, in terms of predictions on AI and ML?
Yeah, it's huge. Right? I'm actually a ChatGPT user as well. I kind of find it fascinating, even down to the point of where it can do some really smart things when you use it in a particular way. The worry is, as humans, is we don't use things to its biggest potential, right? We'll start using it from too many mundane tasks, when actually it's so powerful and that it can truly add value. Going back to what we said earlier, that if we kind of link back to what my expectations are of employees, that curiosity and adding value, Global Lingo therefore has to have a stance on AI and how it can use AI and machine learning to add value. And think curiously about the tool. So, for example, ChatGPT, as a sales organization, they're talking about how can you use ChatGPT to formulate different ways to reach our clients, to get the right structure, even training, to how you formulate social media posts. But it's really important that we don't get lazy by it. So I think that's kind of what draws us into, right? Is let's just use the content that comes out. I think it's a great tool to generate ideas, to help with creativity, but it shouldn't be trusted as the absolute output.
No, I agree.
AI within translation, again, it's the same thing. Don't 100% trust the output, but let us get to the end result quicker. So we predict that AI and machine learning are going to play a crucial part in the language services industry, not even just from the translation aspect, the transcription aspect, but from how we actually operate as a team. I was talking recently with our technology department of how we can integrate ChatGPT into customer service functionality within the platform. Because as a user, for me, when I write into ChatGPT and I get a response that feels human, it's probably the most human feeling response that you can get utilizing AI. You start thinking about, well, if I was a customer user and I want to get a status update on a translation project, I don't want to dive into a customer portal and try to find the order and try to find the status and do all that myself. I'd love just to go to a platform, type in, tell me how we're doing with this particular order, and it humanizes the response and I get it instantly and I can just be like, okay, great. So how can we use ChatGPT? How can we use AI in all areas of the localization business to ultimately improve experience? Because that's what we're all looking for, right? Is a better user experience in everything we touch. But we also believe that human intervention is critical for processing nuances and complexities of language, and like I said, even the nuances of copy creation. So I think it's really exciting. I think it's an exciting place to be. I think we've all got to be curious about how better we can use the technologies to help ourselves. But it's going to be an interesting 5 years, I'd say.
No, I'd agree with that. I read an article on it recently, actually. It was a Sunday Times or whatever, and they were talking about the impact of it. And, they had it doing some degree papers and, it would get you 2-2, but it wouldn't get you a first. I think that's kind of where we are at the moment. There's work to be done.
Yeah.
Carl, what about the impact of the current recession, particularly on tech-related companies? We're a young industry and, we've never really gone through the turmoils of some of the old traditional industries or whatever. But I'm thinking of, even as a recruiter, a lot of the work I'm doing is in the States. I'm getting a lot of heavyweight leaders approaching me at the moment, either saying I've been made redundant or I'm in danger. And also things like, the interest rate rises that are trying to curb inflation, adversely affecting global banks, people like Silicon Valley Bank, who, funny enough, are a client of mine, who fund growth in tech companies. And then on a day-to-day basis for me is things like, good people need more convincing now to make that move, because obviously there's an element of risk in there, etc. But what's your view in terms of the impact of that in terms of the industry?
Personally, I think it's just the creation of uncertainty. We've felt it at Global Lingo, that the fact that the uncertainty in the economic market, we saw Jeremy Hunt come out the other day and said the UK won't enter a recession and inflation will be curbed by the end of this year. But then on the other hand, we're getting mixed messaging about layoffs and redundancies and banking crises. So I think we just need to, it all just creates some uncertainty in business of what do we do next. At Global Lingo, we're seeing the uncertainty create maybe longer decision-making cycles, perhaps, or stronger budget controls when spend's coming in. But I personally believe that what we're seeing right now is essentially just a correction to errors that we made during the pandemic within big tech and beyond in the retention of talent. And that's probably causing the most uncertainty around the markets in general, because the layoffs don't make a whole lot of sense in some regard. But then when you realized and look back, and Global Lingo addressed this at the time as well, I think we did a better job at coming out of the back end and retaining talent, is the response globally to burnout, to stress, to concerns of employees wasn't to address the concerns and the burnout and the stress with long-term sustainable solution. It was just to hire more people. And by hiring more people, it did overcome the stress and the response to burnout because they had more people on the books. And we saw revenues grow in some of these tech companies or other agencies over the past 2 years, but we saw profitability decline. And there's pressure on the shareholders to correct profitability and earnings issues. And that's driving, in my opinion anyway, the layoffs that we're seeing now. So I just kind of feel like, yes, we're seeing a correction to the market. That is seeing potential concern, even among other language service providers. How do we manage this next? But I do believe, personally, it's going to resume normality in the second half of the year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And sad as a recruiter here, that's what I feel like a barometer. I think that you can never have too many good people. And I think obviously a lot of companies have grown maybe too quickly. And obviously, if you look at industries that did well during COVID, tech was definitely one of them. You know, when you had grandmas Zooming grandkids, you knew there was something interesting going on. So we continued to grow exponentially during COVID and what have you. So I think it's an opportunity. And, you know, I was talking to one sales director who was saying they're constantly looking to improve their lowest common denominator as, you know, in terms of quality. So I think, you know, there's all of that going on, and it's a good opportunity to do that as well. So what about you and what about Global Lingo? I mean, what's exciting for the future?
Yeah, I mean, for us, our growth is exciting. I mean, over the past few years, last year we experienced around 17% year-on-year growth. The year before that, in the 30s. So we are really seeing the business scale, which has allowed us to invest in technology and has allowed us to invest into other regions such as Egypt. So expanding our reach and improving our services is definitely really exciting for the business. We are excited about the potential for technology to help us continue to achieve the goals. And I'm a huge advocate for trying new things. Like I love technology. I love what it can bring to our day to day. For example, among my senior team, we started trialing out the utilization of virtual reality meetings. How does that work? Does that bring a different dynamic? As a company, we're trying to pursue the Be Certified certification and trying to do our bit for people and the society and the environment at large. So we are trying different ways to avoid having to get on flights all the time. And how can we maybe connect and feel connected through using technologies? So I kind of feel what's exciting is the value technology is going to bring if it's really curiously used in the right ways and deployed. So we're going to constantly invest our time and efforts into technology improvements. And over the past 6 months, we definitely increased our investment into business development, both in APAC, EMEA, and the USA. So we're seeing more business development team members join. That's creating a lot of opportunity. We just signed a contract with TikTok, for example, and that's going to be a really exciting US opportunity for us in market research. So there's some really, really exciting partnerships happening, and hopefully we'll continue to see that growth throughout this year.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, with the recruitment head on, I agree with you in terms of it's still an exciting industry. You know, it's a young, dynamic industry. And, you know, it also really affects how people live going forward. And I think there's some really exciting challenges coming down the line, hopefully some good solutions as well. Mm-hmm. So listen, last question, Ryan. What about you as CEO of Global Lingo? You know, the higher up the chain you go there, you know, it's probably a different perspective from those heady heights. So what have you learned as the CEO at Global Lingo?
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning experience for sure. And I always reflect on my experience of coming up from bookkeeper to CEO and my experiences at each level. And what I learned from that, I suppose, it's really important to actually reflect back and be like, okay, well, how did I experience that then? And how can I have empathy for somebody in that role today where I was at one point in time in the same organization? So I think that's definitely been a really great learning experience. But I'd say over the past few years, the importance for me has been positive staying focused on what we created as a plan. We run in 5-year sprints. So what's been really interesting is we've worked in that 5-year business plan really well. I kind of transformed into like building relationships with clients more, and that's been a great experience because you start to hear more direct the problems that we're trying to solve. And I myself am a bit of a problem solver, so I love being able to kind of ideate that with the clients to see what I can do there. But also internally, we actually just today had our employee awards. And Frosso, who's our people operations manager, did an awesome job at creating this internal presentation. And sometimes you ask, like, as you grow with an organization, you ask the why, right? Why do I get up every day and do what I do? And first part of these 3 months, I traveled a bit. So I went to our Guatemala office, I visited the UK, I went to see a client over in California and a sales guy we've got out that way. And it always helps to bring back that why because you see what you're creating. And I think that's actually really important, right? You actually can lose focus when it's about growth, revenue growth, profitability, all really important concepts. And we've got to report into somebody, the shareholders or a private equity firm, whatever that is. But as a CEO, to be able to have a deeper meaning to your role, like that is, for me, probably the most important factor, because then you ground yourself back in it and you're like, okay, this is why I do it, because I'm creating opportunity for these people and I'm creating opportunity for us to solve bigger problems for clients. And then as I travel as well, you kind of really appreciate the diversity, inclusivity we've created across the globe. Like the language service industry is typically very women focused, but we've got a really good female leadership team. It kind of goes through the organization. We've got people of different cultures across the world. And over the past few years, we've all dealt with that remote working argument, right? I think that's been a really fascinating concept of people saying, well, actually, it should be remote or it should be in office. And what does that look like? But one of the things that grounds Global Lingo all the time is when I talk to the employees in different offices, I say we've all still got things to learn. And I think this is actually one of the important learnings as well, is you never stop learning, even as a CEO. So my point to them is when I visit the offices and I'm talking to everybody in different levels of the organization, I'm also learning so much in that space, learning about who you've employed, what drives them, what motivates them, what could you do better. And for me, again, it's massive learning because keeping connected. It's
I'm glad you said that, Carl, because I remember one of the first training courses I ever went on, right? A guy was talking about, what does your client want? He was saying, look, they want 3 things to go up and 1 thing to go down. They want turnover, profitability, and customer satisfaction to go up, and they want their cost base to go down. But there's so much more to it than that. And easy for the recruiter to say, but ultimately so much of it comes back to people. You can never have too many good people, and that's kind of it, really.
Right.
Listen, Carl, we're out of time. Very interesting. I've genuinely enjoyed talking to you, and I've learned a lot. Good luck to you and Global Lingo in your continued growth. And basically, thanks very much for joining us today.
No, thank you, Morris. I appreciate it. And good luck for the rest of the year.